Binge. This week we are over with our break and we're back at the MCU, starting off Phase 2 with Iron Man 3, which I haven't watched in a while, so it was a fun film to watch. But I'm Harrison.
I'm Kelton.
And I'm Cade.
And this week we've got something new. We're introducing what we call our spoiler wall. So super quick, this is just where we're going to give you a recommendation about the movie, our thoughts about it, completely spoiler-free, whether we think you should go watch it or not, and why. So we're just each going to get a minute to talk about the film. I guess I'll go first. So would I recommend this film to you? Should you go watch it? No, unless you really love Marvel films. If you like Marvel films, totally watch it. You'll love it. If you're invested in the MCU, it's a great film to watch. If you're invested in Tony's arc, it's a great film to watch. But if you're just like not, like if you haven't watched the other MCU films or you're not into that, you don't like them, I don't think that will like this movie. But I did, because I'm invested in Tony's story and I'm invested in the MCU and I liked it. The music in this movie is a ton of fun. Tony Stark is hilarious as always. There's some really funny actors in this movie that are just a ton of fun to watch. And if you're kind of into the MCU, but you're not quite sure if you would like it or not, I'd say give it a try. I don't know if this is a spoiler. I don't want to reveal too much, but it's very different than any other Iron Man movie. It's more kind of like a spy thriller type thing than it is it's classic superhero movie. But so, yeah, that's my recommendation. Yes, if you're in MCU. No, if you're not, and in between, maybe.
All right. So my recommendation. So I love Iron Man so much. So I obviously enjoyed this movie because I think this movie does a really good job of helping us learn a lot more about Tony. Kind of like what Harrison said, it completes his arc a lot more. From obviously the first Iron Man all the way till Endgame, there's a big change, and I think Iron Man 3 lays a lot of the groundwork for that. I thought it was pretty dang funny. There were great dialogue throughout the entire movie, and I think this movie does a great job at helping us relate more to superheroes, specifically Iron Man, but I think it does a great job of realizing that, yes, they're human, and maybe they have different questions and doubts that are very similar to what we have, as normal people. So I would definitely recommend this movie to anyone. So there you go.
Awesome. Well, this is your boy Cade. I said this recommendation. A few things I want to point out. This is just a fun movie to watch. It's got some action. It's got hilarious dialogue, like Kelton mentioned. It's a action, funny, and I will point out that the rating of PG-13 does live, yeah, it does live to that rating. I will say that. If you want to have a bunch of your friends, a bunch of dudes get down and watch this movie, yeah, I totally recommend that. I'm kind of gonna sit on the other side of the fence with Harrison. Is that you can enjoy Marvel, you can enjoy the whole universe. If you're just kind of looking for if you enjoy Tony Stark, if you enjoy Iron Man, then I feel like you can watch this movie and you'll really enjoy it. That's my recommendation.
So there we go. That's a spoiler wall. We're breaking past it now. Jumping into our regular scheduled program. But just super quick announcements. Our Kickstarter is live. It is launched. So if you guys, we need your help. Getting some better audio equipment, making my editing time a lot easier, and the sounding much better. You probably noticed on the last few podcasts, we've had some serious microphone problems, so we can avoid that by going back in our Kickstarter. The link's in the show notes. We'd greatly appreciate it. So thanks, guys.
Yeah, for real. Because honestly, that would just make our dream come true. Because we totally enjoy doing this every week, but having better equipment, I think, would just be a better overall experience for everyone listening. So definitely help us out. And giving a big shout out to my boy Andrew. This guy's hooking us up with donating on Kickstarter. So big shout out to you, bro. You're amazing. Thanks a ton. You're really helping us out. But yeah, anyone, if you donate, we can give you a shout out, and we'd really love to reach our goal and to get some better equipment. So anything you donate would totally help us out. So
yeah, so thank you, Andrew, for being our first donator. I got the email whenever you donate. I don't remember. I talked about before, and it was your project is 1% backed. And I was like, what? It worked? Like, people donated? It's not zero anymore? And I saw your name, Andrew, so thank you.
You're our savior, dude.
Yeah, it's no longer 0%. So.
Big thank you to you, Andrew. Again, like I mentioned, just bringing it down to earth. Like, reason why we ask for your guys' help is that this is your chance to invest in the content that you like, that you enjoy. And so this is, partly it is for us, but it's more for you in helping out and what you love to listen about. And, all you guys who've been downloading all this time, we want to say a big thank you again. We're up to a total of 416 downloads. Keep it going. And we're just glad to be a part of this whole fun little journey.
Yeah, it's a blast.
Oh, yeah. For sure.
So, there we go. We'll move into the movie here. Again, Iron Man 3. So we'll start with our 2 cents. Back to our regular scheduling program, starting with our 2 cents where we get 2 minutes of uninterrupted time to talk about our thoughts about the movie. And then we do a pick or poison, which are personal rating scale, followed by binge points, which are fun details we noticed. Least and likes is our, obviously our least and likes about the movie. And lastly, we end with fall in. Always my favorite section where we're talking about the meanings and get some great conversations. So we'll start with 2 cents here, and I will go first as soon as Cade's good to go with my 2 minutes here.
You're ready.
All right, 2 minutes on the clock. So my thoughts about this movie, I loved this movie. I hope that my spoiler wall didn't make anyone think I didn't like this movie. I really enjoyed this movie. I think it's hilarious. I think it's a ton of fun. The action's fun. The dialogue's good. The writing is good. The acting's great. There's so many good things to say about this movie. But yeah, it's a ton of fun. It's Iron Man. Like Kelton said, that you really get some big foundation points in his arc in this movie. But it's been really interesting, especially taking this break from the MCU and to go outside of the world of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Because these movies are so unique, and I don't want to say that I think they're bad. I love them. I'm a huge fan of them. I'll continue to like them probably until the day I die. But they're so different than anything else, and I think a lot of the comments that have been said about these movies is kind of opening my eyes to them. And so I went into this with a much different eye after taking a break and watching those 3 films. I'm getting off track here. Because personally, I wasn't excited for this movie. Like all the other weeks, I was like, oh, we're watching this movie. And I knew what movie we were watching. I was way excited. And this week I was like, wait, what movie are we watching? Oh, it's Iron Man 3. And I had to remind myself. And so there wasn't that much excitement. But watching it, I'm sad I forgot. This movie's a ton of fun. But it was interesting to see how to understand how that those criticisms that the Marvel Cinematic Universe gets, I can understand more. I don't think that they're completely wrong. But that's not anything to do with the movie. I love this movie. It was fun. The acting's a ton of fun. Kellen said it's hilarious. But it's just, it's cool to see that Marvel is like, hey, we got the typical superhero action villain story that they did with Iron Man 1 or 2 or even the Avengers. And those are great films. They did very good. But I think this is the first step that Marvel took to try something new. That Iron Man was outside of his suit 90% of the film. And he was just being the spy guy around, with his homemade gadgets. And
yeah,
it was sweet. And it was cool to see that. I really believe that this is the first step that Marvel's like, okay, we'll try something new. We got this superhero thing figured out. We'll do something.
Okay.
Buzzkill, baby.
Buzzkill.
All right, Kate, you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, here you go. So I totally agree with Harrison. This was definitely a different step in a Marvel movie because it really made the hero vulnerable. Throughout the entire movie, it's really stark. From the get-go, he talks about how we create our own demons, and I think that does a very good job of kind of wrapping up how maybe his decisions in the past really affected his future and caused him problems. But also, we just get to see Tony struggle as he tries to protect, the love of his life, Pepper, and also of dealing with being a superhero, the emotional toll and mental toll that it takes when you have to go out and save the world and go through these giant attacks and have your whole perspective changed. There's freaking aliens in space. Let's be real here. It's not just okay, we saved the world, let's go home. Heck yeah. But it's wow, we just saved the world. But I think a phrase that Tony said was really good is you ever experience something and then you just can't get past it? I think that's totally relatable. If you go through something huge that changes your life and your perspective, it's not like you're just going to be able to move on. And we could see how Tony really struggles mentally to be able to not only move on, air quotes, from that experience, but also be able to still function and like be a superhero, and sometimes the sacrifice that it takes to be one. And so I really love this movie. Like, I love Tony Stark, and I think this movie really begins to take a step down, him changing. And I just love everything he says when he's dealing with kids. It makes me laugh so freaking hard. I love it. I kind of hope to be a dad like him. Not in the way that like he's a jerk or whatever, but like just how he can connect with kids, and he knows how to, the perfect amount of, oh, I'm getting super deep here. What the heck? But frick, dude, this is hard.
Oh.
All right,
Okay.
your turn.
All right, my turn. First thing I want to point out is that I realized that how good of a bad guy Killian was. That like, no, he is the Mandarin. He's looking at him. It was like I always thought. I remembered him. Of course, he was a bad guy, but I didn't remember how good of a bad guy he is. Because you look at Iron Man, the first one, and then you have Obadiah, and how he was like in everybody's personal space. Now he's kind of this gentleman, but he's like, you can just tell that he's evil, and he's just this bad guy, and you just tell. But he like at face value, he's just kind of this creepy professional dude. And at the beginning, they kind of gave off Killian as that, and I always like that. I always feel like that kind of characteristic is good for a villain. But also, one thing that was really interesting was, like you guys have mentioned before, in this movie, they just focused more on Tony Stark rather than Iron Man. And people always think maybe, oh, I love the suits, because I don't remember the suit ups and all that stuff, like in the second one where there's the suitcase, and in the beginning where it's this whole montage and stuff. But they didn't disappoint, because this whole movie he's without a suit and he's making stuff as he comes along, and then you get this suit overload of like 50 suits at the very end, and like that just satisfied my want of all these suits and of like what Tony Stark his hobby was. And I like how throughout the movie you hear Tony Stark saying everybody needs a hobby, and it's really cool to see how he's used that hobby. And also, I think I forgot about Pepper and how she got like injected of like that weird serum or whatever. And I thought that she wasn't cured of it, and so she wasn't able to move. I wasn't able to use any of those in her powers in the other movies, but they cured her, and I forgot about that. So I'm out.
So that brings us to pick your poison. All right. So for anyone who doesn't know, this is our personal rating scale on how we rate the movie, whether we would buy this movie, whether we would rent it to watch it, like a time or two, or we would never watch it again. So I'll start us off. I actually, as much as I love this movie, I feel like this is somewhere I would buy this to have the complete set of all the MCU, just to have. But as I said, I really love this movie, but it's, I don't know, it's more of like an experience. It's not, I wouldn't say I'd love to watch this like 10 more times. Mm-hmm. It's good to watch, and it's been a couple years since I last saw this, but I've seen it more than once. But I thoroughly enjoyed this movie, and I was excited to watch it. But I would probably say, like, this is just a rent. I'll probably watch this a couple more times in the future, but I wouldn't say it's enough to buy. So that's my take.
I'm actually the same as Kelton. I'm like, I love this movie, and don't get me wrong about it. But there's just, when it comes to my collection of movies that I want to get and stuff, like I have other movies much above this one, and I think this movie is awesome movie to watch. But for me, like I would rent it, or if that, I'd kind of, if I get in the mood of like maybe I should watch this, well, I don't own it, so I'd maybe ask a friend or like watch it with them. But for me, I don't know. There's a lot of movies that I really loved, I really enjoyed, that I would love to buy and watch it over and over again, like Wreck-It Ralph and Stranger Things and stuff like that. Those are, my personal favorites. But to me, I say I'd rent this movie rather than buy.
I'm with you guys. I mean, I already bought this movie. We watched my copy, but I'm kind of like, if there was an option between rent and buy, that's where I would be. Like, it's not quite rent status, but it's not quite buy status. Somewhere in limbo between. Like I said, I bought this film, but the only reason I bought it is when we started this podcast, I knew that we were going to watch all the MCU movies, and I didn't own this one. I was like, somehow we got to. I want to own it just to get the complete set. I'll just buy it because it was on sale. And like, but there were so many movies that like I wanted to buy before this one that like, if it wasn't for the podcast, I still wouldn't own this one. Does that make sense? Yeah. Like, I would have chosen to spend my money on a different movie. But it is a good movie to rewatch. Like, I don't dislike it. It's a ton of fun to watch, but I think it's one of those movies that, like Iron Man 2, I love that movie. I watch that movie all the time. Or like Tron, the last episode we did. I watch that movie once a year. This movie, probably every, like, 5 years. So it's a great movie, just not quite up there.
It's like it's a worthy sequel. It's not garbage like Pirates of the Caribbean 2, but
Caribbean 7.
It's not like it's a crap sequel, but it's a solid sequel and it's a good movie on its own.
Yeah.
So, okay, all right. So we are on to our next segment. This is our binge points, where we talk about references within the movie, whether it be characters or little snippets of you could say an Easter egg within the movie, or even just dialogue within the movie that are references to other things in the movie or further on, or movies that are kind of a callback. I'll start first. One of the most heartbreaking scenes for me is seeing Tony Stark's house get blown up, because that house was so sick. That was nice. It's such a nice house. It's on the coast. It's just gorgeous. And it just gets blown to bits. And so I looked up the price of Tony Stark's house, and get this, it's $117 million.
Did they actually blow it up, or is it like...
I don't know, but I just know the price of it. $117 million. And how long was that scene? It was like under 5 minutes.
But like, and even all the stuff he had, like his cars, you see that freaking nice Audi just like going off the cliff.
But that was like, piano was probably like 15 grand.
Yeah, who knows? But yeah, I feel you there, man. Like, that was, it's hard to watch. Everyone's deep down just like, frick, all of his stuff. Like, come on, man. You watch like his suits blow up one by one. You're like, no.
Every time I watch that scene, like even in the theaters, this was like the first memory I have of any Marvel movie in theaters is seeing this movie. And like during that scene, I didn't have any of like the emotional grip. Like, oh no, he's in danger. Like, it was like his stuff. Even watching it this time, I'm like, no, like not his stuff.
Which I think Marvel, I feel like Iron Man is one of the few superheroes where Marvel lets him like get kicked that hard. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
we definitely see, I feel like, a bigger emotional side of Tony Stark than I would argue more than any other character in the MCU.
I mean, you could argue like Thor up at the end of Avengers Endgame. But
I'm gonna stick to my take on how I think Tony Stark is by far the most like emotionally invested character in the MCU. I feel like he goes through a ton every movie. I'm not saying it's like the worst. I'm sure you could argue that Thor has gone through more. But anyways, what I'm trying to say is that I think that Iron Man is really just... Because I think his personality is so extreme, it's easier to kind of let him show emotion. But yeah, I think this movie really... You begin to realize like how much like crap he kind of goes through.
Because it shows in the beginning of the movie like his progression and how he's kind of narrating his own life, but then like all the crap he did, and then like kind of the karma that he has to go through. It's pretty dark or pretty crazy. So I would agree on you on that.
Well, I mean, like whoa, this is totally out binge points, but like the film says, like you create your own demons. If anybody's creating demons, it's definitely Tony Stark.
Yeah,
like
definitely.
And I think it's a reference to what at the very end where it has the helmet. And he's wondering if he's gonna like, if the thing pops open and he's gonna see the Mandarin's head, and he's like kind of worried he's gonna see it and it's gone. And so maybe, figuratively speaking, that point is where he defeated his demons. Yeah. That's a reference back to that first quote that he said at the beginning of the movie.
Another cool binge point I noticed was with the whole name tag. In the beginning, Tony's name tag just said, "You know who I am," which is obvious. Like, everyone knows who Tony Stark is, and that's pretty cool. But the kind of reference later in the movie, one of the first times you see the Mandarin, he's talking. The Mandarin is so freaking like,
Wait, which one?
Pure evil, the
very
fake one.
first. The
The
fake one?
fake
Trevor
Mandarin.
Slattery?
Yeah, Trevor. Yeah,
Oh,
dude.
yeah.
Like, when I watch those, like, short videos they broadcast illegally on the air, like, holy cow, that's a bad dude.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this is bad to say, but, like, what a great villain. That guy is, like, pure evil, and I just, like, when he talks, I just think of, like, power and just, like, destruction.
What is that? Propaganda. It's
Yeah,
great propaganda.
It's good propaganda, mad respect. But at the end of one of those videos, he's like, you know who I am, but you don't know where I am, like...
And you'll never see me coming.
And you'll never see me coming.
But, like, I just thought that was a little throw to, like, Tony Stark. Is like, you know who I am. People see Tony as, like, this, you know, whatever, billionaire, whatever, playboy. But, like, the Mandarin, you know who he is, but it's completely, like, all negative. And I just thought it was a good contrast to show between Iron Man and the Mandarin, so I really like that.
That's sweet. Other sweet bench points to note is Yinsen, the guy who helped save Tony in the cave from the very first Iron Man. He's in Switzerland or wherever it is, wherever he's at the beginning. In Switzerland, he's there. He's met him before, and it's just, I mean, oh my God, that's so cool.
And I want to see if, like, go back to the scene in Iron Man where if, like, does he mention that they've met before?
I think he does mention that they've met before, but he's like, of course you don't remember something like that. If I remember, I don't remember, but other cool bench points. So when that opening scene where Iron Man's like having the suit fly to him and he's like putting it on. So like the mask comes and he does like the sweet superhero flip and it hits him and then he lands. So the mask hits him hard enough that it splits his lip.
Oh, really?
So like his face is completely clean and then the mask hits him and it shows him on the inside of his face and his lip's bleeding. And then the rest of the film, he has a split on his lip from the mask because it hit him so hard.
I did not notice that detail. That is way cool.
Yeah, I was like, what the? He wasn't bleeding before. I was like, oh, well, maybe the mask just hit him hard enough. But I thought that was kind of cool. But I also mentioned this earlier. This is just such a different Iron Man film. Like, especially comparing it to Iron Man 1 and Iron Man 2. Like, it's all about the suit. It's all about, like, this. It's total, like, superhero classic stuff where this is so different. It's like a guy struggling to deal with the consequences and emotional weight of being a hero. But he is the hero. It's not the suit. Like, I love the thing at the end where he's like, I am Iron Man. It was never the suits. It was always him. But it's just like so fun seeing him like sleuth around with his spy gear, like when he's going to the boatyard with Rhodey and they've got their guns, and it's just so different and so fun.
Oh yeah, and I think it's cool. Like whenever they tip their hat to Tony, like the first time when the kid walks in with his potato gun, like the kid's like, "Oh, is that Iron Man?" He's like, "Well, technically I am, you know, but like he built him and stuff like that." But also when the kid walks in, he says. He immediately starts talking about how the potato gun could be way better. It's like, too long of a barrel, too wide, or blah, blah, blah. Like, and then throughout the entire movie, he has these moments when you could just see how really much of a genius Tony is. Yeah. When he's trying to hack into the AIM database or whatever to look at those files of who the Mandarin is and where they are and stuff like that. And then just when he's building all those sweet little hand gadgets to, like, infiltrate the AIM facility, like, it's totally...
So creative, too, like... How did you think of that? Like the ornament? Like, that was so cool.
But I just love, like, just seeing... It's this side of Tony that doesn't really get talked about. Yeah. Just see him as Iron Man and blah, blah, blah. But he's really just a genius. And it's fun to just see him in an environment where he thrives and he can just build really cool things.
It's sweet. There's a cool bench point. So that scene, the barrel of monkeys scene outside of the plane where everybody's falling. For anybody who doesn't remember. So everybody falls out of the plane. And Iron Man goes and saves like 13 people and drops them in the water. That was all done practically. Like, that was actual stunt people falling from a plane and linking themselves together. Obviously, Iron Man wasn't flying around with them, but I just thought that was really cool that they did that for real.
You could tell it was legit, too, as they're whipping through the air trying to catch each other.
So cool.
Lots of fun. Any other binge points?
There's a ton that I don't remember, but, like, I did not remember how hilariously adult the dialogue in this film is. Like, the last time I saw it I was so much younger, and like they just say so many different innuendos that are just hilarious. Like, I didn't even catch them all, I'm sure, but they're so funny. Like, the first like 10 minutes of the film, I was cracking up like every 2 words that Tony said. Like everything he said is just like hilarious.
Every other phrase you said.
Every other phrase, he's just so funny. But I don't remember any of them. I just remember it was hilarious.
Yeah, lots of fun there.
Yeah, but I don't have any others.
Yeah.
All right, I'm good. Let's move on.
Okay, so now we're going to move on to our leasts and likes. That was hard to say. So these are just things we did or did not like about the film. Favorite scenes, favorite lines, least favorite, whatever it is. Just likes and dislikes. So I will start. We always start with our dislikes. And this is kind of a complicated one. But, so I kind of talked about this in I think my 2 cents is what it was. Man, it's all blurring together. But, like, there's been a lot of comments about, like, the MCU and how it's not true cinema and it's, like, despicable, I think one person called it. And somebody else said it was, like, ruining movies. There's, like, a lot of people in Hollywood who are talking about the MCU and how it's kind of ruining Hollywood and ruining movie making. And
yeah,
I was, like, really defensive of that at first. And then taking a break from the Marvel movies and then coming back to it. Like, I don't completely agree with them. I don't think that they're 100% right. I mean, they're totally entitled to share what they think, and that's great that they have a different opinion. I'm just sharing mine. But, like, I don't completely agree with them, but I understand that they do have a point that I have to agree with. Like, I love how they made Tony so vulnerable with Pepper and also, like, the PTSD, if that's what it is, anxiety or whatever it is. I think it's PTSD. But, like, it wasn't, like, enough. It wasn't as mature as I, like, would hope to see, but it also, like, doesn't bog it down. I don't know. I'm still trying to form my feelings about it. But so anyway, short thing, what I don't like about it is that, like, it wanted to be grown up and talk about a man who's, like, dealing with anxiety and PTSD and being vulnerable and protecting his wife. But, like, it did in some moments. In other moments, it was, like, a complete joke. And it, like, was trying to be mature, but then, like, pull back and be funny. And it just, like, maybe I wanted it to just be, like, a little more mature. Like,
I see what you're saying.
That was way complicated.
It was like the right direction, but it wasn't enough.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Okay.
I think it was very cool, and, like, you could tell that they were trying to take a step in that direction, but, like, it didn't go far enough for me. Like, I have a lot to say about it, and I really love what they did, but, like, they could have gone further.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point. So my leasts, I only have 2 in this movie. But first off, I think the music wasn't that good for me.
Oh, really?
I didn't, like, usually when I'm watching a movie, there's a moment where I just get super hyped up. It's like, oh my gosh! Like, it's just so intense and fun to watch. And I felt that when I'm watching all of, like, Iron Man's suits show up. But I think back on it, I have no idea what song it was. I didn't feel
remember,
that
like, the melody
huge,
or, like, that big.
You know, quick reference, Thor 3. We all know when he comes out with this lightning without his hammer, like, the music just totally drives the point home.
A good song.
Yeah, like, and I feel like Iron Man 3 in this particular movie, I didn't feel like the music drove me to the emotional highs and lows that the movie wanted me to feel. I feel like it should have been more intense, and I think this is where I'm kind of getting at with you, Harrison, is that there was a lot of good directions laid out, but I feel like I wanted them to go farther. Yeah. Like with the highs and the lows. And I think music is a great way to push the audience to feel that. And I don't think the music was there for me necessarily. And sure, there are some great scenes where it was there, but I feel like in some of the other ones, maybe the more emotional scenes, when either you're super hyped up for the battle or you're feeling sad because Happy's in the hospital in a coma, like, I feel like the music could have played a better tool to push you to feel a certain way.
Yeah, I agree with you about the music in this one. I said at the beginning that I love the music, and it's just like the Iron Man 3 song is like, I just love the Iron Man 3 song. It's my favorite Iron Man one. But other than that, I agree with you that the music wasn't very good. And, like, especially what you mentioned, like, music, when it's done right in movies, it's like a lot of the time I'm getting way off subject here, but, like, let me dial back. You were talking about how it didn't help you feel the emotional. Like, when Pepper fell off and, like, everyone, like, you think she dies, like, granted, we know that she didn't die, but, like, I wish the movie would have allowed you to feel the emotion of Tony. Like, he thinks she's dead. Yeah. Like, why didn't the movie make me think she did? Like, I remember thinking, like, even this time, knowing that she lives, I was watching, I was like, wow, there's, like, no emotional impact to that. There's no, like, song that was sung out that just makes me cry. Like, music is the strongest way to get me to feel emotion when somebody dies. And, like, I just felt nothing whatsoever. Like, no emotion. And then it moves on. And it just says, like, killing walking up the stairs. Like, she just died. Like,
yeah,
let me
it's
feel
like
something.
The first 5 seconds when she dies, you see Tony, it, like, hits him like frick. But I wish it would have translated to like rage when he fought Killian. Like,
that's what
holy
I was
freak,
thinking.
or just anything,
and
just like the
something.
music to push you,
and that's
to connect more with how Iron Man.
and that's what I really feel like. That's one of my least is that it's that Pepper's a huge character in Tony Stark's life, and then like she quote unquote dies, and you're like, I'm just when I was watching that in the theaters, I was just shocked, and then like oh my gosh, she's freaking dead. Like, how the heck is she gonna survive that? And then like he gets up, he's kind of like shaken, and then like gets up and he's okay, fight mode. I'm like, that's Pepper. Like what the heck?
Like, I felt no emotion for it whatsoever, and I think a big part of that is music, because that affects me a lot, so I agree with you, Kellen. But also, like, I was expecting him, watching this, was like, oh, he's going to stand up and he's just going to be raging, and he's going to win over Killian. And then he just goes back to being quippy. And I'm like, what?
Like in Civil War, like when he found out, he went crazy.
He's nuts.
But he didn't, like, comparing this to now, it's like, well, she's dead.
And the other scene with Happy, when he ends up in the hospital, like, I didn't even, like, register the emotional impact that should have had on Tony. I was like, wait, what?
know,
like later he mentions to the one dude about Happy. Oh, he's talking to Trevor Slattery, and he's like, I got a friend in a coma who might not wake up. I was like, oh, that's what happened to Happy. Like, I felt no emotional weight for Happy whatsoever.
So I think that's a good way to describe this movie. It's a good movie, but it doesn't drive you to those highs and lows as well.
No, and
as the other Marvel movies or other movies in general can.
Yeah, and even the highs, like, I didn't feel like, it was there, but it wasn't
there. To be super specific, it was there, but it wasn't there. So.
Yeah. It's like the difference between like a roller coaster and then like a kid's ride. Yeah. Like, they're there, it's just not as noticeable, and you could fall asleep if you want.
Yeah.
But that's a little extreme.
But yeah, so to move on, my second dislike, and I can explain this pretty quick. Why the heck are Iron Man's suits so freaking crappy?
They're just like fragile.
It's like boom, blow up, okay, next suit. Like,
and even head gone.
And even his Mach 42, you feel like, and it's dope, like the idea that goes behind it, but I just feel like they're so fragile. And there's like that throughout the entire movie. Oh, we don't have flight power. Oh, it's not battle ready yet. Or oh, I'm just gonna shut down. Or oh, and it's just like, it was harder to watch because in the other Iron Mans or Avengers, you know, Tony goes through heck. Like, but thinking about it, if he went up against like Thanos with Mach 42, dead.
Be like flick of his finger.
Yeah, blows up. Just like, so that was like, it was weird just to see. It felt like they were so fragile, like a normal human. Well, it wasn't normal, like those fire dudes just like pulled the head off like no problem with one of his suits, and it was like, what?
Oh, I agree. That end fight, I just like, when they showed up, I was like, oh, day's wrecked. Like, this is gonna be like a 2-minute fight scene.
Yeah.
And they just kept getting their heads ripped off, and I was like, this should not be this eeasy. Like,
yeah, it just felt like they were really fragile, and
like compared to like the first Iron Man, where he gets shot down with a tank and he gets up and boom, blows up the tank and walks away. But this one, it's like, it happened to Mach 42. That would be the end of Tony Stark. Yeah. But maybe they're just trying to drive the point of that it's a prototype, and they just kind of wrote on that like the whole movie.
Yeah, I think maybe that's a way that's saying that, like, I'll get into this later in Fallen, but like Tony was so obsessed with like finding new ways to protect himself that he would just like make something and then like make it exist and move on without like making it durable and sustainable.
Yeah.
And I think it made the threat bigger than it actually was, because, you know, I feel like if there were 42 suits of Iron Man's suit from, you know, Avengers or something, then it's not even like a problem. Like you said, the battle's over in like 2 minutes. No one, like, all the suits are fine. They just take out the bad guys. So it needed a bigger threat and show that these guys actually are dangerous and they could like take on an Iron Man suit. So I think that's why they did that. But it was just, it just felt like out of sync with everything else, all the other MCU movies with Iron Man. So it's my last dislike.
Did you have another one, Kid?
I didn't.
So we'll move on to likes. There's a lot of things that I liked about it. I've already mentioned this a lot, but I love the uniqueness of it. Like, I really feel like Marvel was like, hey, let's try something new. We got the classic good guy, bad guy, opposition story. Let's try something new where the guy like is really vulnerable and is outside of his suit for 90% of the film and has got to make his own gadgets and go infiltrate a base like a spy. Like, I mean, Winter Soldier I think is a way better spy flick, but like I could see that, and this kind of contradicts what I said in my least or what I didn't like, but like they were trying to do something more mature and different and unique and not the classic cookie cutter superhero thing.
Yeah.
But they weren't quite sure how to do that, so there was a lot of missteps. Like those highs and lows we talked about, it wasn't as mature as they want. I think they were just kind of figuring it out. So I like that they did something new. It's not perfect, but it's something new. Good for them. Like, yeah, rambling. But there was a specific scene that I really, really liked, and I'm trying to remember it. Go ahead, Kelton. Maybe I'll remember.
To say what my favorites are, I really would. There's a lot, but I'm just gonna go with one that maybe not a lot of people noticed. To put it out there, I love this movie. Every part about it. I could probably do 20 different favorite scenes, but the one I'm gonna stick with right now is Happy and how he is like a head security. That was so freaking. He keeps putting badge. It was, hey,
I sent an email.
Badge.
I sent an email. You said memo. I sent a memo.
I know. It's like, do you have level 4 security clearance? It's like, run your 4 by me, or just stuff like that.
Or even at the beginning, like the very beginning scene where the plant blows up and like Happy runs in and tackles Tony.
Like, it was so funny. I thought Happy nailed it for this movie.
John Favreau,
every single part, like, this movie was incredible anytime he was in the scene.
Yeah.
He did a great job, and he just gives off that vibe of being like over obsessive about like security, but it shows that like, he cares. And just the way he goes about doing his job, I think is so funny. And just I love every moment with him in this. You know, he's down to get dirty and just like fight people, but just the methods he does it. I just love the whole badge thing. Everywhere, just badge. Hey guys, badge.
Like thumbs up. He's like, badge. So
and then his whole thing with like technology, he can't figure it out. Here, check this out. He's like,
One of the answers like, is this the forehead of security?
This is the forehead security.
It's so funny. He's like, check this out.
What? He's like, what?
You
flip the screen on. I can see you.
Flip the screen.
Flip the screen.
He's like yelling in the lobby that he does not flip the screen.
So I'd say that's one of my many favorite scenes or parts of this movie.
I'd say one of my favorite scenes was this. It's when Tony Stark, he's talking to the kid at first, and it's just everything he says back to him is just downright hilarious. Just any conversation that he has with the kid. Now, what the kid responds back, I don't necessarily like this kid because he's just super annoying because he's like this 12-year-old or something like that. But like, I love the scene where he's like, Are you gonna leave me how my dad left me? He's like, yeah. He's like, wait, are you guilt tripping me? He's like, I'm cold. He's like, I know. No, I know why? Because we're connected.
I think that showed connected. I can't remember if it was my 2 cents or my recommendation, but like, I just love how Tony is with kids. It's so freaking funny. Like, he's real. He's like straight up with them, but he's not afraid to just like
roast them.
It's so funny. I love that. So
I remember my other like specific favorite scene. It's the one where he's like strapped to the bed thing, and the 2 guys. He's like talking to the 2 guys, and he's like, 3, 2, 1, now! And like his suit doesn't show up. That's just hilarious. But then when his suit does show up, and he has like 1 hand and 1 foot, and then the gun in his hand, that scene's just so like it's cool to see him like learn how to fight without his whole suit. But just that whole scenario, all up until the point where he like points his hand and the gun at the gun. He's like, I didn't like working here anyway. They're weirdos. That it's just so funny.
Yeah, that was
and like seeing him like fly in the air and like spin around in a crazy circle, like firing an Uzi is just hilarious.
Or the point where he's like, they're hiding, like him and Rose are hiding. He's like, okay, how many are there? And he like looks over and he's like, how many do you have? I didn't see. It was too fast.
See, too fast. Or like Rhodey's all serious because like he's trained in the military and he's like walking down with his gun and Tony's just walking. He's like, you got your gun up? And he just like holds it up to the side. Like, what the heck are you gonna do with that, dude?
And I love that because it shows like even though Tony is like a superhero and everything, he wouldn't know training or how to be combat with just like a gun and everything. No. So like, that whole like minute scene was so much fun to watch.
Yeah,
just Tony's like
what
figuring
was that?
it out.
Like, nope. I hit a bulb from that far away and goes up, boom, hits it. So I love those like just banter back and forth. And my other favorite was when he finds out that Trevor is just an idiot as an actor. Like, watch the face, don't hit the face. I'm an actor. He's like,
I'm an actor. Okay.
You have 1 minute to live. Fill it with words. It's like, It's just like
So it's complicated.
it's complicated.
Like later he's like, so I have this problem with drugs, and he's like, what'd you tell you give them off? And he's like, no, they give me more.
It's like, did you tell him anything? Nope, I didn't told him nothing. You should have pressed the panic button. I panicked and then I handled it.
So funny. So I'll talk about this now because the next section doesn't apply. I know that a lot of people don't like this film specifically because of the Mandarin twist and how it was like a total fake out. And like, I was too young to know anything about this at the time, or just naive, who knows? Both. But like, I realized that a lot of people really wanted the Mandarin to be like that propaganda terrorist, like for it to be more than propaganda, for him to be like a legit terrorist. Because it would have been really timely, and it would have been cool to see Marvel make like a film that was kind of serious and kind of timely, and then they just turned it into a joke. But I don't have a problem with that. I don't remember that, and I think the joke's hilarious. I love the character of Trevor Slattery. Ben Kingsley does it great.
That was good, like, casting.
Oh yeah, he's hilarious. And I also know a lot of people had it because of like the comics that the Mandarin is one of Tony Stark's like biggest enemies, like his arch enemy, if you want to call him that. And this Mandarin, if you want to call him that, is nothing like him. But there's a what do they call him? A one cut. There's a Marvel one cut where they like fix that. I don't remember what.
Oh, I've seen it.
It's so funny.
It's super funny. It's just straight Trevor. Yeah, it's hilarious.
We won't spoil it, but it's fun. Go look it up. Just look up like the Mandarin Marvel one cut. It's hilarious. It's on YouTube. Yeah. But I love the twist. I think Trevor Slattery's hilarious, and I think it was pretty cool to see like have Aldred Killian be like a villain who's like a master genius that has a plan, and he understands that he made a mistake, and like he can turn it and twist it to his advantage, and it just makes him that much more threatening.
Yeah, but I still gotta say the Mandarin before the twist. Holy cow,
man, dude!
That would have been a scary villain.
Yeah, and part of it was like it seemed like super like violent and intense at some parts, but the whole thing I can't get over the scene when the president has to call him so he won't shoot the accountant on live TV. Oh yeah. And so the president like have to, so he calls, and the manager's just staring like at the TV, and he hears the ringing. It's just ringing, and then he doesn't even say anything. He just still shoots the accountant. Like, holy cow! I thought of like the Joker from The Dark Knight. Yeah. And just the whole thing is it's all about sending a message. Like, holy cow! So props. That was a great like build up to the villain, and so I thought it made it super intense, and it made you someone like you were scared of him. Like, this guy's all powerful. We have no idea where he is, and he's just killing people, and like, holy cow! So
I think that's why a lot of people had a problem with the twist, because it was like you have this really mature and timely, like that would have been really appropriate for the things we were experiencing in the world at the time, and like then they just turned it into a joke. Yeah. But like he is intense, and it's a hilarious joke because I panicked and then I handled it.
Oh yeah. All right. Awesome. Any other likes or leasts that we wanted to talk about?
No.
All right. That builds us into our last and favorite part, which is the fall-in, where we each kind of talk about maybe personal or themed things that we noticed in the movie, and we talk about it, relate to it. So, anyone want to start us off?
But I'll start off. One thing I really thought was really interesting was I forgot that Tony Stark narrates this movie, and it shows that he's admitting that he has faults, that he messes up. Because in the very beginning, in the first movie, Iron Man, he doesn't really admit to mistakes, and that movie shows how his turnaround. That, oh my gosh, what I'm doing is not right, and so he's having all these changes in his life, and he wants to make things different. He wants to make all these changes. In this movie, you get to see him narrate kind of in past tense that this is, I went through just a man once said, well, how did it go? It was like, we create our own demons. And so it shows that he went through these struggles and that he's admitting it. And you can see in his work, you see it in his past and in his relationship with Pepper that he has to admit his faults. And I think that's what elevated Tony Stark from Tony Stark to Iron Man, to the superhero, is that he's admitting his faults.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a film where Tony really has to like grow up, like, and stop being the billion-dollar playboy philanthropist. Mm-hmm. Like, he has to recognize that he's made some mistakes and that he has to be bigger than just Tony Stark, which I think is really, really. But I think he has to get like super vulnerable to get there. Mm-hmm. Especially just like we mentioned this a little bit earlier with like the anxiety and Pepper and like needing to protect her. But I was just going to talk about like I don't have PTSD. I don't want to like even get like pretend that I know what that's like. But like I think everybody to some degree has experienced anxiety in their life, and I think at least for me personally, this film does do a pretty good job at portraying what it's like to have anxiety. Like especially that one scene where he's like drawn on the crane with the crane. The kid's like, "How did you get out of the wormhole?" And he like freaks out. Like that whole scene. Like I'm like, "Whoa!" Like that is what it feels like when I have anxiety. And I think it was cool to give a hero such like I don't want to call the flaw because it's not, but like such a crippling experience, for lack of a better word.
Aspect or character.
Whatever the correct word is for that. But it's very crippling, and it can be, and I think it was very,
or just showing the power of anxiety that it's a real thing, and that it can happen to anybody. Because before that, Tony Stark was pretty confident in himself and what he did, and after that huge major thing, you could see throughout the Battle of New York that a lot of things are really overwhelming for Tony Stark. And he's like, I'm seeing it, not believing it, and so you can see the aftermath in this movie of how he's able to deal with New York. That New York wasn't just a superhero battle and we can move on from it. That was a huge thing. And throughout the MCU, like that New York fight was like pivotal. Oh, yeah. You think about it.
And like I don't think that's something that we'll ever be able to truly understand. Like, yeah, we can watch a movie, but like I mean, granted, this probably is never going to happen in real life, but like imagine that you are a superhero, you've got this team of 5 people that are all like one turns into a freaking green monster, and the other one's from a god from space. And all of a sudden, you have this army from another dimension come through this portal in the sky, and you got to throw a nuke up at it. Like, whoa! Like that's some heavy stuff. Like I don't think we'll ever be able to understand what it would be like to experience that. And then like, well, that's over. I guess I got to move on and have like a normal life with my wife again. That'd just be so. So I think it does a really good job. It's also saying like, hey, there's things that happen in people's lives that cause these emotional or mental challenges that are incredibly crippling, and like we all have to come to terms with those demons. That yes, we create our own demons, but I also think there's other things that give us demons that we have to.
Yeah. And I think I really like this movie because it shows. I feel I could relate to Tony Stark a lot because I feel Tony Stark. We know he's a mechanic, but he likes to deal with things that he can control. He likes to be the one behind the scenes. Playing on his terms, I guess, where if there's a problem that he could fix it, so when he goes through something, like right after that scene where he's signing that kid's thing, I think that was really cool. It says like, Aaron, help me, like just the kind of mental and emotional state you get in when you have like an attack like that. But the first thing he does, he runs into his suit and he's like, all right, what is it, Jarvis? The heart, the brain, like what is it? And he's like, I think you just had, fix. He's like, yeah, he's like, okay, what's the problem? Let's pinpoint it and like get rid of it, fix it. And Jarvis is like, I think you just had your first major like anxiety attack. And he's like, me? Like I have an anxiety attack? Like how could that happen to me?
Yeah.
And I feel like that's very relatable. How when people find out they have a certain stumbling block or weakness, it's like me. Why? Like I'm me. Why would that happen to me? And so as we see Tony try and deal with and his ways of coping with that, I think is really cool. And we see later on when Tony has the panic attack in his car and he gets out and the kid's like, well, why don't you just build something, and it may not take away the problem, but it definitely helps. And it makes me think in my life, like when I'm going through like a stressful moment, like what do I try and do to help me cope with that? And for me, it's like I love listening to music and reading up on like sports or anything with sports. Like it helps me. But I think it was really cool and very relatable to Tony as we see someone who wants to be able to control everything and fix everything confront a problem that he can't just fix. And that sometimes we have problems like that in our lives where it freaking sucks, we hate it, we don't want it, but it's there. And it's not like we could just sit and mope about it, but we got to act and be able to figure out how to move on with our lives. And that may sound like harsh, but find whatever way is healthy to be able to deal or at least cope with your problems and continue on, you know?
Yeah, I love that. And it reminds me of this quote that I love from the actor Bill Hader, who has, I believe it's anxiety. And he was sharing his experience, like, overcoming anxiety. And I loved what he said. This isn't word for word, but some along the lines of, he said, it's not something that gets better. Like, you never get, it doesn't get better, or something like it doesn't fix. You can't cure it. It doesn't get better, but it's something that you get better at handling. And I think that also showed, like, Tony at the end, like, his natural instinctual response was to, like, build things and build a bunch of suits that could protect him and protect his wife if they're married. I don't think they are, but let's say Pepper. They're not, because I remember he proposes later. But to protect those he cares about, and like that's not something that we can do. There's not a solution. There's not something to fix. We just have to get better at handling it. And I think Tony says at the end, like it wasn't a hobby. It wasn't something, but it was just like a distraction. And I think that like we're pretty good at distracting ourselves, but like that's not really how we solve it. We have to get truly better at handling it.
Yeah, I think I really relate to that point where Kelvin really hit home on, is that I really feel everybody has a moment in their life where they feel invincible. Now they understand they have limits. They understand that I can't do this, I can't do that. But it's the point where everything that you have control over, you feel like you've got it down. Mm-hmm. Like you get it. Like for me, in July, I dislocated my shoulder. I've never had this traumatic injury before, and it really kind of put a lot of tie downs.
Your shoulder, you tore your rotator.
Right, and so I tore some muscles in my shoulder. I had to get surgery to repair it, and so ever since July, which is it's pushing on 6 months now, where I've had to realize that look, I can't really be as physically active as I can. And so it's kind of it's an eye opener where I'm not invincible. Stuff can happen. And I think everybody has that moment where they do feel invincible and then something does happen. And it's a moment that they remember for the rest of their life or quite a while, or it pushes them to the point where they become somebody greater. And this movie is a great example of that. And I think everyone needs to know that there's going to come a time, it may not be dramatic, it may just be something subtle, but some sort of event where it hits you personally or hits you at home to have you rethink and try a challenge to adapt to see if you can handle it. I feel like everybody's going to have that moment in their life, honestly. And, people who have had that moment, I feel like this might be a moment for me with my shoulder and this major injury. There might be another one later in the year or later in my life, as we see with Tony and throughout his whole story arc. But I really feel like everybody will feel invincible at a time, but everybody will be challenged as if life is asking him, do you really feel invincible? How are you going to handle it?
Yeah, that's well said. There's at the very end, he says something like, I didn't write down word for word, but he says like you start something exciting, and then come the mistakes and the compromises. And he was kind of hinting at that, like those mistakes and those compromises are what gives you, or what causes you to create your own demons.
Say that again. That quote.
So you get you start something exciting, but then comes the mistakes and the compromises. And I think that like I completely agree. Like I think there's a moment where we all feel invincible to a certain extent, and I think we can feel invincible in different ways. Like there's one point in my life where I felt invincible physically, and then there was another point in my life where I felt invincible like mentally and emotionally. And there's different challenges that come with each of them, and I think you get so excited about this newfound invincibility that you start to compromise and you start to make mistakes. And not necessarily in every situation, but then something happens and it's life-changing. There's this demon that you've got to deal with all of a sudden. And you realize that maybe you're not so invincible, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Amen. Well said. I agree with that.
The other thing that this isn't a super big fall on, just kind of like a slight one, I didn't know where to put it, is like I remember seeing this movie in theaters and like seeing Iron Man blow up all his suits and then get the shrapnel taken out of his chest, and I was like, what? Like, okay, I guess Iron Man's done. Like, his story's kind of over. Arc reactor's gone out of his chest. The shrapnel's gone out of his chest. All his suits are gone. And like we all know that obviously that is not the case. And so I've never watched the Marvel movies like in order, if that makes sense. So I'm excited to see like Like, I know how his story continues, but I don't know how it continues from this point. Like,
What happens?
we're at this point, and I know that there's a story that continues later, but I don't know how we get from this point to that story later.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see how that happens in the movies we're about to watch, especially having to do with what we just talked about. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, it'll be interesting for sure.
I agree with what you said earlier, Kellen. I think like Iron Man is he goes through a lot. I think his arc he has the most frequent difficulties that he has to overcome.
I think his arc is the biggest in the MCU.
I agree. It's his story. The Infinity Saga is him.
Yeah.
It's his arc all the way through. And there's
He
definitely
changes
other,
the most,
there's
by
those, it's like it's one big book, and the different movies are different chapters. And of course, there's different characters who all get their own arc, but there's that main character who has the biggest arc and the biggest emotions and the biggest weight. And I think that's Iron Man and Tony Stark.
What to say, brother?
So,
I like it.
yeah, any other fallen things?
No,
I like it.
All right, let's wrap it up then. Thanks for listening again, guys, to the podcast. Downloading all, like we said, back to Kickstart. Download the episodes. Yes, help us. Please.
Follow us on social media, Instagram, Twitter, all that stuff.
All the above.
thanks for listening.
What it do, baby?
Ciao, ciao.
Peace out, home dogs.